Hello everyone and welcome to our final Flip Collaborate recording for the unit for the TP, Supporting Inclusion for Primary. This is for Assessment 3, your case study report. Welcome, and hopefully you get a bit of information tonight so that you can be ready for our live Collaborate with any questions, and hopefully we can clarify some of the requirements for this assessment. So let's get started. My name's Karina and I'm the unit coordinator and also an ELA within this unit. So the agenda for this session is the assessment expectations, the assessment process. We'll look at the assessment criteria and the assessment structure, the report format, and also the support that's available to you as a student of Swinburne Online. So for this assessment, the word limit is 1,500 words, plus or minus 10%. This gives you a range of 1,350 words and 1,650 words. This isn't a huge word count, so you'll need to be succinct and direct in your approach to this case study. That's why following a good structure, which we'll go through later, will help you do this. The 40% weighting of this assessment reflects the timing of it, in that by this stage of the TP, you should be ready to make recommendations of pedagogical approaches based on your knowledge and understanding of diverse learners. This assessment will bring together all the learning that you've completed throughout the TP in this unit on a policy level, at a whole school level, and at a classroom level. And the due date is Monday the 3rd of October at 9 AM Australian Eastern Standard Time. So that's the commencement of week 12. So the assessment process is pretty clear from the details that you've been given within the assessment brief. The first step is to identify from the list of 7 students that you've been given in the assessment document. So you need to identify 2 students with additional needs and 2 students from culturally diverse backgrounds. So altogether, you'll be looking at 4 students. So that's 4 students that you are covering for this assessment. So not the 7, you're only having 4. 2 students with additional needs and 2 students from culturally diverse backgrounds. The second step is to discuss. This is where we're covering what each of the learners' needs are. You're going to identify the behaviours you'll see in the classroom from the different children, and you're going to compare and contrast the type of support that these learners with additional needs and culturally diverse backgrounds require. There'll be areas where pedagogical approaches and also needs overlap for some of these children, and some which will be totally different. This is where you compare and contrast. These recommendations that you would make based upon your knowledge of the student and those of best inclusive practice that you've covered over the TP, as well as being supported by academic literature and research. We've drawn upon so many fantastic readings and research over the course of the TP. It's really important that you now use these to support your recommendations, so that your recommendations have been backed by research and what literature and research has determined as best inclusive practice. So this is where you will draw on learning materials and the readings that we've provided to you, but also other readings that you've done in support of this assessment. The final step of the assessment is to consider. In this step, you need to draw upon your knowledge of best inclusive practices and consider what are some of the predictions that may occur as a result of your recommended support options being in place for the identified students and also for the other students in the class. Remember, we're catering for all students in the class. So the assessment criteria covers 4 criterion. Each one of these is equally important, and all of these must be covered within the holistic rubric to pass this assessment expectation. Think about all the elements that have been covered over the course of the TP that impact upon student learning. Some keywords such as responsive teaching, supportive environments including the setting, the curriculum and the teacher, adaptable teaching practices, resources for inclusion, differentiation, and a whole range of directives found throughout our learning that promote best inclusive practice within a school and classroom context. If you're thinking about these and referring back to the criteria and the rubric, you will achieve success. Don't forget that editing is a vital part of the writing process and it influences the way in which your message is being interpreted by your audience. And your audience for this is us as we're marking. So you really want to be careful about your editing so that we are interpreting it the way that you want us to interpret it. This is number 4 for the written expression. This is really, really important. This forms a part of the rubric for each of the grades and will be followed consistently by the ELAs marking this assessment. Keep referring to the rubric, but also keep in mind that holistic rubrics build up from the pass level, so that students must achieve all of the descriptors within a grade before moving up to the next grade. And that is most important in the pass grade. So even if you're aiming for a high distinction, you first need to look in the pass grade, because if you miss one crucial area, we can't actually pass you. So make sure you look up and build upon it up until your high distinction. Remember, this document, it's like a cheat sheet that you have. All ELAs follow this when marking to ensure consistency and fairness for all students. So the report structure for this assessment means that you are able to use some varied formatting and frees up a little more of that succinct writing to the assessment expectations in the form that bullet points are allowed. As our subheadings, you can have subheadings throughout using these headings. For example, you might have introduction, you might have findings, you might break up the findings into findings, A, B, C, so that you can, segregate each child. It's completely up to you, but you are more than welcome to use subheadings. This is just a guide, what I've displayed here, and we've provided it to you, and it's not compulsory to follow. However, this is what we have found would respond in full to the expectations and allow you to maintain a flow and a structure for your assessment response. It makes it and keeps it clear. Again, it's not compulsory, it's just something that we are providing for you as a recommendation. So here we have the introduction at 150 words, which is about 10% of the word count. You need to really stick to that. The introduction shouldn't be a huge chunk of your assessment. It's just introducing what you're doing. So it should only be about 10%. Same with the conclusion. This should include information about the case, such as the school. So you've been provided with the case study, and this needs to be drawn on for that information. So you'll include information about the school or the classroom, and you'll also have your own individual perspective about inclusion, that, where you would draw on information that you've learned throughout the TP, so the unit contents and tasks. So that's how you kind of structure your introduction. Just a general what's happening, what are you looking at in the report, and give a bit of context for it, so your individual perspective on inclusion. The findings, which we've recommended about 400 words. So in this section, you'll include each of the learner characteristics or behaviours and your interpreted learning needs for each child. So you're not just restating what's in the assessment brief, you're actually including the characteristics and behaviours of each learner and your interpreted learning needs for the child. Each child has different learning needs, so you need to tell us what they are. Some of the needs might be the same for other students and some might be different. Okay, so then in the recommendations section, which is a suggested 400 words again, this will cover the pedagogical practices that would be implemented for the learner for each of the learners. These need to be tangible recommendations centred on the school context provided in the assessment brief. You may refer to your own state policies in regard to funding and make recommendations in line with this. However, make sure they are realistic recommendations for the setting and this case. You have been provided with that school context, so use it. Show us that you can draw upon from evidence. So show us that you're drawing on from the evidence that has been supplied to you. Use academic literature to support your recommendations, as this should add credence to your chosen pedagogical approaches. This can't be just written as an opinion. This needs to be written in third person, and it needs to be supported by academic literature. So your recommendations need to be supported by academic literature, and so too will some of your findings. It needs to be weaved throughout your essay. Your discussion needs to show how you would go about implementing these practices. So again, this is 400 words. So it needs to show how you go about implementing these practices for each learner, about monitoring progress, feedback, reflection processes for the teachers or student support staff and other stakeholders. So it's 400 words approximately. You'll also cover predictions for what might happen as a result of these support options that you've recommended. So what are the predictions? What might happen as a result of these practices being put in place for the identified students, but also the other students in the class? Think about those best inclusive practices that we've covered so extensively throughout this unit, and draw upon these to paint a true picture of inclusion in practice. Then you have your conclusion, which should just tie together all of those ideas. And it's, again, only 10%. It's just a summary, 150 words. And your references and appendices, if there's any, will not be included in the word count, as always. This final assessment is a reflection of your understandings across the whole unit. It's a culmination of your unit's work. So this is what we're looking for. Basing your pedagogical approaches upon the unit's teaching will ensure success with this assessment and also within the walls of your future classroom. If you follow this, you'll be certain to achieve success. So if you draw upon and have gone through the learning materials, selected those readings that maybe you found that really supported your way of thinking, absolutely use them. This is where your success will occur, by drawing upon what has been provided to you. This is showing that you understand that your whole understanding of our unit, and it's a practical application. So you will use them throughout your future teaching career. Finally, the support that's available to you as a student at Swinburne Online. You have your discussion boards, and I cannot emphasize the importance of this enough with you participating in the discussion that's happening on these boards, as well as engaging with the learning materials and weekly activities. These are all scaffolded to your assessment, so they're going to assist you enormously in fulfilling the assessment requirements. We also have your tutor and Smart Thinking external body resources available for you, so please follow the assessment support tab in Blackboard and use these services. If you complete your assessment in a timely manner, you'll be able to use these resources really effectively. And they may pick up on structural or grammatical information, such as, is my report flowing? Are my ideas flowing from one to the other? Have I maintained a grammatically correct structure throughout? Also, we have the assessment brief and the rubric, and it's really, really important to keep going back to these as you complete the assessment. Use the holistic rubric as a checklist from the pass grade right through to high distinction. Start with the pass grade. Make sure you are covering every single section of that pass grade, and then build upon that. We have the live collaborate for your questions in regards to your own dealings with this assessment, and it's very valuable to attend these, and we look forward to seeing you at that session, and that's on the 21st, it's Wednesday, the 21st of September, and that's at 7:30, where Vivara and myself will be there running the session, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for your time, and I hope this recording has allowed you to gain some clarification and understanding about where we are headed with this assessment task. Any further questions, don't hesitate to go to your discussion board and ask your fellow students and your ELA. And thanks for joining us. See ya.